afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to AVX Live. I'm Joe Gilderson, President of Corporate Audio Visual Services. And I got to tell you, we've had some amazing guests on the show over the course of the last 4 years, and today is no different. But before we get into talking about fundraising strategies for nonprofits, of course, I got to remind everybody how you can find us. Okay, you can find us on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube, Wednesdays at 1 o'clock. While you're on any of those channels, make sure you hit the like and subscribe button. And of course, if you're watching live, drop us a comment, be a part of the show. Because what could be more fun than being on AVX Live? I don't know, probably nothing. If you miss any of the episodes, you can check them all out on the YouTube channel. The other 120 are right there for your perusing pleasure. And if you don't see anything now, you can always catch up on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. Alexis will post some great clips, and we'll have some fun afterwards. But look, let's get this show started because everyone wants to know how to improve their fundraising strategies. So let me tell you about our guest, Angela Ciminello. Angela is a trailblazing nonprofit strategist and fundraising powerhouse with over 25 years of success in securing transformational funding, exceeding revenue goals, and building sustainable philanthropic programs. She's raised millions of dollars for mission-driven organizations, consistently breaking records and redefining what's possible in nonprofit fundraising. Angela is renowned for her creativity, relentless drive, and strategic innovation. With expertise in major gifts, donor cultivation, and strategic philanthropy, Angela has helped nonprofits double and triple their fundraising capacity, proving there are no limits when innovation meets execution. As the founder and president of Cimi Consulting, Angela partners with organizations to craft high-impact fundraising strategies that turn vision into reality. She serves on multiple nonprofit boards, has co-founded a foundation to fund education for young women in underserved countries, and has been named a Women in Business by 914 Inc. magazine for her exceptional leadership. So please welcome to the stage, Angela Ciminello.
Hi.
Hey, how are you?
Well, fabulous after that intro. I'm going to take you everywhere with me.
I mean, this is fun, right?
What's more fun than AVX Live?
I mean, that's what I say. I don't know why people don't believe me.
I believe.
You see that? I had to go to camera 2 for a second.
I saw that.
Yeah, this is live. This is live theater. This is the way it works. Sometimes you got to go to a different look.
You should get an AV guy.
Yeah, I probably should. They're very hard to find right now.
I know a good one.
But, you know, speaking of AV people, I think you might be trying to give me a run for my money. I have seen you lately in all sorts of Shark Creative radio spots. And I'm curious, are you like moonlighting as a DJ or what's going on here?
You know, it's where in the world is Angela Ciminello? No, I use Andrew's wonderful, and Shark Creative is a wonderful medium in which I can highlight my clients, their mission, and the need for support, which is so important.
Oh, man. See, I knew you'd have an answer for this. I mean, but look at this. You're everywhere. How did this happen?
Andrew and I have known each other for quite some time. I have experience in radio. One of my jobs included a monthly radio show. And as a side gig, I had a rock show on WVOX.
Very nice.
Right.
Very nice. Wow. You are multi-talented.
I'm mass communicating.
I have so many different ways to go with that. But listen, so I read a quote from 914 Inc. magazine after you won the Women in Business Award that I thought would be a great place to start. It said, I don't think I've ever heard any child say, I want to be a fundraiser when I grow up. So let me ask you, how did you first get involved in fundraising?
So I stand by that statement. I still have not met a child who said, I want to be a fundraiser when I grow up. But there are certainly traits that I think lead people into that field. In my case, it was more the champion of the underdog. I always wanted to help people. I was the one that brought home the stray dogs and carried a first aid kit in case somebody got hurt. And that was my why ever since I could remember. So when I graduated graduate school, I was approached by my alma mater to join their fundraising department. And I wanted to give back because Iona University was very good to me by giving me a full ride to grad school and partially funding my undergrad. So I
Nice.
stayed on. And long story short, I didn't know a lot about fundraising. I wasn't sure if I was a fundraiser, but one day, late going to work, early 20s, lived 5 minutes from work. So of course I'm late and I'm speeding and I get pulled over. And when I got pulled over, the person asked me, where was I going so fast? And I said, I started a new job at Iona and I didn't want to be late. And he mentioned he was a graduate, to which I immediately responded with the first thing that came to my mind, which was, did you give to this year's annual funds? So long story short, I did not get the ticket, but we did get a sustainable donor because I asked
Oh.
that question. But it was in that moment that I realized, oh, I can do this. This feels good. This feels like where I should be.
So that is much better than blinking your eyes to get out of the ticket and, looking real nice. I mean, this seems like a better story.
It is. It is. I think so. I didn't blink my eyes. I wonder if that would have worked. Thanks for the tip, though.
I mean, I have extensive experience in this sort of thing. So, except it doesn't work. I usually just get the ticket. But that's a pretty cool way to get involved and get started.
Yeah, I thought so. But it was definitely an eye-opening moment for me, which was nice. So it solidified where the rest of my career was going to go.
Wow. Now, I don't know your whole career, but my understanding is that you've spent kind of time in several different organizations, but really all in the fundraising capacity. Maybe you could tell us about some of those organizations, like how the fundraising's the same or how it's totally different. Because I think that's kind of cool to know.
Yeah. So, I think no matter what type of nonprofit it is, there are definitely common threads that weave throughout philanthropy. First and foremost, relationship building. That's how every good donor stays a donor. It costs much more money to recapture a donor or acquire a new donor than it is to keep one on board. So relationships are everything. And I think that applies to any business, but particularly fundraising. And compelling storytelling. I think one of the mistakes that nonprofits will sometimes make is not investing in marketing and communication because there isn't an evident ROI. So if there's not a return on investment, which you immediately see in fundraising, they tend to shy away from marketing. And I do think storytelling is the reason people give. So to me, they go hand in hand. Again, a common theme. And then demonstrating impact. People want to know what they're giving to and what their money is making a difference to. Those are the common themes. I think when it comes to how they differ, it depends on so many variables, succinctly size of the organization, what the mission is, how swamped is the market with that type of mission. Westchester has over 7,000 nonprofits. There's going to be overlap. So how do you differ? It's true. It's true. That's the bad news. You know what the good news is, Joe?
Tell me.
There's only one of me, and I'm really good at what I do.
And apparently not lacking for confidence as well.
No, I'm so humble. I'm the best at being humble. I don't think there's anybody better, to be honest with you. So
no, I know a lot of the most humble people.
So here's the differences. I think the differences are you need to be creative. So by that, I mean, when you join an organization or you're looking at a new client, what are the ways that you can creatively create revenue generating programs that will allow for additional exposure for the organization as well as bringing in money? So it may be best if I use two quick examples to highlight what I'm saying. So
I think that's great.
Okay, perfect. So I spent 6 years at Wartburg. Wartburg is a senior living community in Mount Vernon, New York. So 34-acre campus. It goes from independent living all the way through to nursing home care. So of the 500 seniors that live on that campus, from a fundraising standpoint, and any fundraiser that's listening to this will understand this, how do you fundraise for that? Because unless you have a parent or a living at Wartburg, and senior care is not, although it is a national issue, it's not really one that's highlighted often. So it became, how do we take that organization to a new level? And I'm proud to say that I took it from 333,000 when I first got there to close to 2 million when I left. And that was just being creative. And one of the ways we did that was because the campus was built in 1866, and some of those buildings are still on campus to this day, as well as new modern buildings. It became a beautiful site for film locations. So Netflix, HBO, Hulu, shows like that would come onto the campus and they would film. And it created this wonderful revenue stream for Wartburg. And it was a way that we could expose the larger community to something they wouldn't normally be exposed to because of that. So it was a good driver for revenue, but it was a way to kind of get out of the traditional fundraising that they still use that to this day. So again, when you look at where you are, it's what's around you. What are the assets that you can use? What are the different avenues you can go down that might not be traditional? Furthermore, and I'll make this succinct because I feel like this is a long answer, it doesn't just start externally, it's internal. So let me explain what I mean by that. When I joined Volunteers of America in New York, national organization, biggest chapter in the country. So when I joined, they had combined both the communications department and the development department. Both of them were siloed. So when I came on, they combined both departments. Both departments were gun shy because the two leads didn't really work together. And one of the major programs was Operation Backpack, which gave a backpack and school-specific, age-specific school supplies to every child living in a New York City homeless shelter. That's 15,000, 20,000 backpacks a year, right? Volunteers of America did this. So when the departments were separated, the marketing department would ask Chase to give them a box of pencils like they did every year. The development department had no say in it. When I came on and merged the departments, we retooled the entire program. At the same time, I started to mentor the staff. And that's what I mean when it says it starts internally. So once the staff started to collaborate and realized that they had a voice and became part of the rebranding, they were so involved and so hardworking that we actually found a corporate donor that funded the entire program. So those hundreds of thousands of dollars that we put towards that program, we can now reallocate for a domestic violence shelter or a homeless shelter or something like that, because Volunteers of America, that is what they did. Their name did not belie their mission. So using that format as a way, using mentorship to bring up the staff so they work harder and more innovative because they now have a voice, made a difference to the organization as a whole. Those are the disruptors I've seen that make a difference in fundraising beyond the traditional fundraising model.
That's pretty amazing.
Thank you.
That is pretty amazing. 15, 20,000 backpacks. That sounds incredible. Even our friend Robbie appreciates. He's got those little hand clap things going crazy. I mean,
I love it.
Robbie's totally into it. No, I love the thinking different is, in the storytelling, of course. On the event side, we see the groups that excel at connecting with their audiences, and it is definitely how they're telling the story and how they're bringing the audience to the mission. And I don't want to say that there's a lot of groups that need work on that, but there's room for improvement. And the groups that really hit it well, they like everybody's fully engaged, and it's super impressive.
Look, fundraising is part science and it's part art. It really is. The organizations that succeed don't just ask for money. They create movements, experience, and connections. That's the key ingredients for a successful fundraising department.
Wow. I get it, because you have to motivate people to act.
Correct.
And that's hard to do.
It is and it's not, right? It's again, I go back to storytelling. It's the way you tell your story, and it's who you're asking, right? It's who and how you're asking. Because I mean, Joe, just using you as an example, right? You're a business connect. So if so if I needed to fundraise for something specific that's personal to me, you may give to me because I'm asking, not necessarily the mission. And then there's those that will give to the mission. So everything about fundraising is strategy.
Interesting. You know, I think that people don't consider strategy as the most important part of fundraising a lot. I think they just kind of get at it. And so I think that's really interesting, you know, and you're obviously clearly an expert in this area. Where have you seen kind of the most success in helping different organizations?
I think it's the ones that are willing to look outside the box or just don't see a box, that there's always possibilities, and certainly have a strategy, not only a short-term strategy, but a long-term strategy. The problem with, not the problem, one of the challenges nonprofits face is that they work on a 12-month schedule, right? Because they have to make their yearly goal for revenue based on what they know their expenses are going to be for the programs they're running and the people they're going to impact. Whereas if you look at it like a corporation with a 5-year strategy and a build to get to that final goal, I've seen organizations have a much better success with a long-term strategy and short-term actionable items. And all of that comes from data-driven information. I cannot stress that enough. Just because somebody lives in Scarsdale, does that mean that they have the inclination, the engagement, or even the philanthropic interest to support your program? Conversely, there may be somebody in your database who's giving $50 and lives in a $5 million house, and you just haven't approached them with what gets them excited. So I always recommend to organizations that they hit their low-hanging fruit, which is certainly their lower donors, while simultaneously growing their major donor pipeline. They have to diversify their portfolio. Like anybody who invests, you have to invest to make the money.
And do you think that that's maybe one of the areas that people kind of make mistakes in, that's kind of the first areas they're not looking at diversifying?
I think some organizations are more transactional than relationship fundraising. And you'll never sustain an active, robust pipeline if you're just transactional. It's the rule of thumb is seven touch points before an ask. Most organizations will have 1 or 2 before they do an ask. If you're not doing anything between asks, the chances of you retaining your donors reduce significantly. So again, it's about strategy, it's about data, it's about connecting where they are with but again, the strategy has to come from both ends. It's not just strategy with the donors, it's strategy within the organization. Who's the right person to make those calls? How involved is the CEO? Where is the board? So, and another way, and I know this is difficult, is understaffing. That the expectation that a fundraiser can do everything that they need to do without the right resources or staff is very challenging, which is why I say invest money to make money.
Nice. Okay. So you're applying a lot of what would be somewhat standard business for-profit practices.
Correct.
Really into the nonprofit strategy.
Well, I think there's a lot to be said about it because the way for-profits do things are more long-term. but nonprofits are up against the wall at times. If a nonprofit is funded by federal or state money, they have to put the money up front, which means they're waiting for reimbursements. If the reimbursements lag, then they're going to have a problem offering those services that they've already committed to. So diversifying your portfolio away from government funding, or at least reducing the need for government funding, and I realize that's hard because government is millions of dollars, is the best way to sustain your organization and ensure that sustainability, particularly with the way the administration is now. Regardless of how you lean politically, it is absolutely categorically affecting the nonprofit sector. If there's any time to be creative and innovative, it's now. It is absolutely now, even with simple things. Here's one way I've seen success recently. Don't send a regular thank you note to your top donors. Send a video. I get video thank yous now. I love them. I've made it part of what I do. I made it part of my own strategy. Handwritten notes. I can't tell you how many times I get comments because I write handwritten notes. So it's not like you have to spend a ton of money. Invest in something like Hootsuite, where you post once on an app and it sends it out to every one of your social media platforms. And then you schedule out for a month. So you take a couple of hours in a day and you schedule out for the entire month. So there's effective ways to do things as well.
No, I mean, a lot of what you're saying is things that we would apply to our for-profit business.
Right.
And so that makes a lot of sense. The scheduling of social media, how to stand out by sending the video thing. Look, this whole show started by how do we stand out and remind people? And we have to use a medium that applies to what we do. And so that's even the touch points. You mentioned 7 touch points. That's like literally verbatim of how you're taught in sales and marketing, that you would need to at least be seen 7 times beforehand. So to me, this all makes sense. I guess, is that what most nonprofit organizations are doing? I guess is really the question in my head, because some of the groups I see are excellent. Others seem a little disconnected.
And I agree completely, but there's a lot of variables with that. And what I mean by that is the ones that are really, kicking butt tend to be the larger ones that are fully staffed. The ones that are, the ED or the executive director is doing everything, that gets more challenging. So I'm not judging any nonprofit because I don't know all the variables that are in it. I just strongly encourage that every nonprofit, regardless of whether big or small, asks the right questions. When they're looking at their annual revenue or what they're projecting, there's always an increase because the board's going to expect that, and you should too, so that you can impact more people. What are the right questions? What are the most 10 powerful things your nonprofit does? I'll ask that to anybody watching this now. Have you asked your staff that? Because that's your messaging. Does everybody have a clear message? What are the giving opportunities? What are the needs? Can you align the donors that you have emotionally rather than just filling budget gaps? Meaning, can you put a significant ask out there for a program that a donor is excited about that would likely fund it, and then allocate those resources elsewhere? There's a lot that can be done with budget relief.
That's interesting. And again, because I think that just that message alone internally can get so lost and confused amongst the people who are passionate about the organization. Other mind the people who don't know anything about the group.
Right.
But internally, that's hard enough on, I think, in any groups day to day to get everybody on the same page. But I think it certainly strikes home the level of importance is probably even higher within a nonprofit organization.
I agree. Yeah, agreed. Look, at the end of the day, people give to solve problems. not to balance budgets, right? They don't care about your budget. They just want to solve your problem. So smaller organizations can break it down by showing impact of giving. $100 will fund X, $1,000 will fund Y. I've even put smaller communities of donors together. If there's a group, and you can say, if each one of you gives $100, this will allow us to fund X. And that's the other thing. You want to create those communities. And you also want to consider generationally. That's another variable with nonprofits. Younger donors are grassroots. They absolutely want to see where their money's going. They want to be involved in it. They want to be like on the ground with the nonprofit, as opposed to an older audience that might respond to paper direct mail, which you rarely get nowadays. So it's always being hyper focused about who you're talking to, not what budget you need to fill. Because if you're talking to the right people in the right way, that will happen. You will meet your goals and exceed them.
I think these are really important points. And I just wonder, if all the groups we work with, we worked on 107 fundraisers last year.
Wow.
And there are extreme differences in each group. But you mentioned one thing about like saying, hey, your $100 goes to this, your $1,000 goes to that, creating that tangible kind of connection. We've seen certainly work better in the live room. I can't speak to behind the scenes, but in the live room, it seems to click. Like it all makes a little more sense. And in our case, we kind of remind them, put some visual to it, connect the dots for them. But that makes a lot of sense to me.
Right. And people will tend to give more, or they'll go into monthly giving so that they can reach that higher level over the course of the year. Right. Generally, that's the best way to sustain donors. And then when you're communicating with them, you can create those small segmented communities so that you're communicating to them specifically about what their interests are.
You mentioned people give to solve problems.
Mm-hmm.
Whose problems?
Well, that depends on what the nonprofit is. I'd say there's a lot of problems out there. Be specific about that. I'm not sure I understood the question.
No, but are they giving because maybe there's something that connects specifically, some problem they've seen in their lifetime, or is it that group touched them at that moment? I mean, is it deeper than, I guess, that surface level I thought it was really interesting statement.
So yes and no, right? Like, look, people, I worked in the homeless sector for years. So the donors that gave were never homeless. So no, they didn't need to have the homeless experience in which to give. They gave because of the mission and they wanted to give back.
If they were homeless, what do you think they'd give you?
At least $2 million. Easy. That's how good I am.
I should have known.
But again, I'll go back to the Warburg example. That was a hard fundraising model, because if you didn't live there or had a senior, parent who lived there, it was a harder sell. So it depends. It definitely depends. One of the ways that I find when it comes to asking donors to help solve problems is tell them your strategy and then ask for their feedback. If they're able to have a voice, you now have engaged them in a level that they weren't before. They now have skin in the game, and they want to see it succeed. So you can't do that with everybody. And keep in mind, you only want to ask for so many opinions, but it does make a difference for those special when you're looking at your top donors.
That's great advice. We have a couple of comments here from the audience. Let's go to those. Doris, she confirmed the statement I read earlier that said you were a powerhouse.
Doris, thank you.
Apparently it's true.
She's amazing.
And wow. Well, Doris, thank you for being a part of today's show. And we got a question. One, Marissa Madonia says, do you see any new trends in fundraising this year?
It's an excellent question, Marissa. That I'm not seeing so much new trends, and again, I'm hesitant to say this because it involves the new administration. There is so much going on with the administration right now in executive orders that nonprofits are, most of them are jamming just to keep up with it. The new trends that I've seen are the things that you have been seeing, right? It's using more digital than paper for anything, events or otherwise. Using Zoom more when talking to your donors. One of my favorite things to do is like a State of the Union when I'm working with clients. Get your top 50 donors on a Zoom call and just give them a State of the Union address. That I think events, particularly Joe, I'm sure you've seen this, the tech that you use and the way people communicate has certainly changed. But any significant trends, I really haven't, Marissa. I wish I had a better answer for you. But yeah.
She asked the hard-hitting questions. That's,
I expect that from Marissa. She's a big
well,
deal.
She is a big deal. Yes. We have a plaque by our door that says the same thing. But certainly using more digital and paper, we see all the time, the printed brochure going to the journal, going to a digital version, no question. I think because he's applied a technology.
I will say this. There's another thing, and some nonprofits have used it, but I've certainly seen success. When you're looking at sponsorships, if you have more than one event, annual sponsorships will absolutely bring in higher level sponsors because they're getting more out of it. So make one sponsorship for all your events in addition to sponsorships for particular events when that event comes around.
That's a pretty good point. I've seen that in other groups too. And I think people, because they feel more connected for the whole time.
Correct.
Not just like a day.
And it makes 7 touch points almost organic rather than you trying to have to figure out what those are.
That's an excellent point. And I like the idea of using Zoom more to connect. We would talk about from our side of connecting to people, like, are you really going to make a phone call? It just seems archaic in comparison to after everybody gets so used to the Zoom thing. But there's a balance, right? Because everybody got tired of being on screen so much. But I think it's interesting. If that's a major donor or someone you're really trying to attract, you still got to connect.
I'll tell you, it's kind of fundraising, but not really fundraising.
Oh, are these secrets? Are these secrets of the trade?
So I use this, but I'm going to tell everybody because I love our community.
Oh, we're going solo here.
And I want to. So you kind of have to find a backdoor in. But when it comes to volunteers, where I've had success is mom blogs, because most of those women are not working. They have young children. They want to keep their toe in the water at work, and they're looking for volunteer opportunities. So think of creative ways to bring in your volunteers, because your volunteers are potential donors. And the way volunteers tend to help the organization is through personal fundraising pages. So if you have an event coming up and you're doing some pre-event fundraising, if you have, Giving Tuesday or Hudson Valley Gives, that's another way. So don't discard your volunteers as just their time. It's their time, treasure, and their talent.
Time, treasure, and talent, huh?
The time they can give you, the acumen they bring to the table, should they be a lawyer or a teacher or whatever, it depends on your mission. And obviously the time they give you and money, hopefully.
Wow. That makes a lot. Again, I think you seem to know something about this game.
Just a little.
Plus, I like things I can type really quick, like time, treasure, and talent, without screwing them up. But
proud of you.
Well, I mean, volunteers, they're helping because they want to help.
Correct.
So that seems like a prime source of activity, or at least they become your external sales force on top of it.
Those are the ones you don't have to cold call for. They find you. So they're your lowest hanging fruit. Look, most consultants, I'm going to say how I work because I truly believe there's so much low hanging fruit in nonprofits and they don't always realize it. When you hire a fundraising consultant, generally what happens is they'll come in and they'll tell you for the next 3 months, we're going to dig deep into your database and we're going to talk to your board and we're going to do this and we're going to do that. And then 3 months later, they're going to give you this fabulous report that's going to tell you how understaffed you are, the 20 things you need to do, of which you have no time and no money to do it. And then you take that beautiful report you just spent a ton of money on and you put it to the side and that's where it sits. Not all the time, sometimes. The way I approach things is let's work on your strategy at the same time that we're working on your low-hanging fruit. Because if you're not seeing an ROI from me, I'm not doing my job right. So that's the kind of thing that I love to do with clients is, of course, you need a strategy, but let's hit the low-hanging fruit at the same time so you see money coming in and get the staff involved. And again, I cannot stress it enough. When you're looking at internal and internal, fundraising starts internally. How do you get your staff involved? It should not just be the development department. And that's a hard sell sometimes. So the way I found that works is get them involved. So for example, if you're having a gala and you're sending out sponsorship letters to your people, and by the way, everybody you pay for your Con Ed, for your office supplies, for your rent, for your, but whatever it is, they should be on your solicitation list. Corporations tend to put money aside for their nonprofit clients, knowing that they're going to be asked for the year. Absolutely put them on your list if they're not already. And then I totally forgot where I was going with this point, but that's a good tip.
That is a good tip. And, you've convinced at least Robbie, because he says,
I love this guy.
You did say you were good at your job, and it sounds like it.
Thank
So,
you, Robbie.
Robbie's on your side. I mean,
sorry. Can I finish my thought? Because I actually remembered it.
Yeah.
Get the staff involved. If you're having a gala and you're writing notes for the sponsorships, Wartburg, I'll bring up Wartburg again. I went to all the chiefs, the VPs, and at first they were reticent to write them. They just didn't want to. They didn't have time. So I wrote them for them. And the gifts that came in, they were so happy to see their vendors give to the organization. So then we would sit down and we would make a thank you call together. Then the next year, I started getting calls. Hey, when are we sending out the note cards? When do you want to come over to make the calls? So it's getting them involved in the success. We'll get them involved in the process. That's when I started to get calls on, I have a family in here and the husband is the head of Citibank. And that's what you want the rest of the organization to keep their eyes for, because everybody's a potential donor.
That's great. That's a way to build a lot of teamwork and camaraderie and internal culture. And it probably has a lot of other benefits besides just on the development side.
To get involved, you mean? Internal?
Getting everyone involved who's not in the development side.
Yeah, because you get everybody on the same message too. And it's one mission, one goal. It doesn't matter what department you work in. You're all striving for the same goal. And on the worst of days, for me anyway, if I'm having a bad day, I pick up the phone and I call donors because they're amazing. They bring up my mood immediately and it reaffirms why I do what I do.
Well, we're going to get you calling on the phones over here. I mean, we don't call them donors, but they do contribute to our funds. So.
That's true. That's true. Well, you got to reach out 7 times, Joe.
Listen, you're preaching the choir. I tell this all the time, but no, these are really helpful tips, to be honest.
Have you
seen of course, the mom blogs I don't really understand, but that's a different point in
time. Have you seen anything at events that you do that's interesting or new? Because I didn't go to 107 last year. I may have gone to 100. I feel like I did.
I think the biggest thing is always the groups that know their audience the best. And so that stands out. They know how they want to contribute. And they're usually the best at telling the story, as you mentioned right in the beginning. We have, so there's a group we work with. To me, they've always been kind of the best at zoning in on that. And their executive director used to come and talk to our entire team ahead of time and was pitching, in a soft way, but was saying, the reason we do this is because of this, and we're going to help. And he would name someone and like an individual, and it really, like, everybody was kind of locked in. Like, yeah, we got to do a really good job. Like their whole opinion changed. It wasn't just an event. It was, now we're going to help so-and-so.
Yep.
And I even saw one night that this group connected so much that the entire wait staff did a collection amongst them and presented it to the ED at the end of the program before they were supposed to go to dessert. They said, we have something we'd like to contribute as well.
The venue
I have never seen that before. And it was absolutely amazing.
Wow. I've never seen that before either.
I've only seen it once, but it's because of the way they could not only told their story, but how they connected all the dots to make it seem like you could help and you should help.
Did they happen to do a story about that?
I don't know that they did.
Oh, I would have been all over that. Who can say that? It is so hard to be unique in business. Oh, they absolutely should have filmed a test of something.
Talk about raving fans.
Wow, that's really impressive.
It was. And, then I looked at the AV staff. I said, how about it? And they weren't. But, we got shown up that night. But no, it's amazing when I see people connect. That's really the exciting part. And, you can tell when some of the traditional paths go a little bit too long, or they're just not, they could apply to anything.
Yeah.
It happens. Sometimes you try something new. It doesn't give you the exact results, but you got to keep trying,
And that's the dance at a gala. Is like you want to get your story across, but you don't want your program so long that you lose people. So again, it's that fine balance between storytelling into fundraising. And that's exactly what it is, right? You play your video, you get your speaker, and you go right into the paddle raise, because now everybody's engaged. You've tugged at their heartstrings, and that's when you'll get the best results from the paddle raise.
Yeah, the one thing we tell everybody is don't put your honorees in the very beginning. I'm sorry, but they're going to leave. So their guests are going to take off, and you're going to miss out on those donations. So I think scheduling and program is also a part of that execution, but that's not really in the strategy side. You're talking right from the beginning, and I think that's really the important.
Yes. Yeah. You don't want to wait until after dinner.
Well, look, I don't want you to give away too many of your secrets, okay? Because they still got to come to you, and you got to dissect their organization to see how you can come up with a good plan.
No, I will.
But this is really helpful. And, I think you've provided our clients a lot of very valuable information. So thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me on. This has truly been a pleasure. And thank you for everything you do for the community, because you may not say it, but I'm going to say it on your show. You give back a lot, and it's appreciated.
Well, we try to do our part. There's a lot of people doing really good things, and we live and work in the same community. So our families are all part of the community.
Exactly.
And, at some point, you might need help.
Agreed.
So it's good to be able to reach out to others to get that help. So
appreciate it nonetheless. Thank you.
But listen, thank you so much for your time today, Angela, and everybody. I put in the chats where you can find Angela's website, simiconsulting.com. She attends a zillion events all the time. I am sure you have run into her. She's a powerhouse, is what they say.
I'm a
at least 2 comments. Like Doris said, she's a powerhouse. Thank you, Doris.
I love it.
Well, listen, I'm going to go and wrap up the show over here so we can get everybody back on their day.
Sounds good.
But thank you, Angela, very much.
Thank you, Joe. Have a good rest of the day.
All right. Wow. You got just amazing tips right there. And that was for free. You're welcome. But you still have to actually reach out because every group is different. And Angela just gave you some really good tips. So if you didn't catch them all, go back, rewatch the show. You can find it everywhere else. I'll tell you where you can find it. Well, let's not go there. You can find it on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. It's streaming live. While you're there, make sure you hit the like and subscribe button. We're going to do this again on another Wednesday at 1. Next week, there might be something. You may want to come back next week. But listen, we're going to wrap this show up. I want to say thank you to everyone. Thank you to Angela. You did a great job today. Let's see if I can find this outro clip because it's time for me to go. Bye-bye. Ciao, ciao.